So, what we've learned so far in this Trump New York criminal case is banking on sex workers and known liars to make your case probably isn't the best move. But I have a sneaking little suspicion that my guest, former Obama Press Advance Director Joanna Maska, might see it a little differently. She joins me next.
Do you plan to testify, Mr. Trump?
Well, thank you very much. As you know, I'm under a gag order, so I can't really answer those very simple questions that you're asking. I'm under a gag order. Nobody's actually seen anything like it. But we talk about subjects we're allowed to talk about. Would love to not be in the gag order. I'm the Republican nominee for president. I'm leading in every poll, and I have a gag order. So I think it's totally unconstitutional, and we'll test that. This will be tested, because this should never happen to another candidate or another person, what's happening here. And today we had a very good day in court. You see what's happening, and you'll have to report it because I can't talk about it too much.
This New York criminal case, the persecution masked as a prosecution against former President Trump, just might be the biggest liberal self-own yet. I say yet because I'm sure there's more where that came from. Not only is the prosecution relying on testimony from a porn star whose story changes with the wind, but also the scout's honor of a convicted, admitted, and known Pinocchio, Michael Cohen. But speaking of fictional characters, the whole charade is really more of a very expensive and resource-sucking game of Where's Waldo? Because a couple of weeks in and we still don't really know what the crime is. An NDA, not a crime. A bookkeeping error, not a felony. Heeding the advice of one's attorney, not a crime, not a felony. You know, I get this case was concocted out of thin air and really just designed to keep Trump hostage in a courtroom, but all signs indicate this is backfiring on Democrats in a big way, because prosecuting Trump isn't making Joe Biden look any better or any younger or any more capable. But maybe that's just how I see it. So let me bring in former Obama Press Advance Director and host of Press Advance, Joanna Maska. It's great to have you. I want to jump into the Trump trial, but first I have to start with some breaking news of the day, and that is that Joe Biden will debate Donald Trump twice, they say. So I want to get your initial hot take on that, because I'm sure you are as excited as I am.
Tommy, first I have to give you credit because you called Kristi Noem way before all of this stuff has come out on Kristi Noem. And I've been talking about you on my podcast saying you were right. Look, the debate, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I think we're going to get what we got in 2020. And it's going to be depressing, I think, to all of us, because this isn't, really our future. These are two folks who have a vengeance for one another going back at it again. I'm glad that they're debating, but whether we actually hear anything new, I seriously doubt. I'm looking forward to new energy in politics, and I'm hopeful that it's not going to be Kristi Noem and some of the other folks that we've talked about, because, look, I think there are good people on both sides of the aisle. I think there are some crooks on both sides of the aisle. So when we get to the Trump trial, I mean, this is the problem, Tommy, is we have a long history in this country of there being some, bad actors in politics who have abused their power and done some awful things. The charge for Trump is an illegal campaign donation because he was paying to keep quiet a alleged affair.
So was he, though, or was Michael Cohen? Because according to the testimony that we've heard, there's nothing that's really touched Donald Trump himself at this point. And then you've got Michael Cohen, who admittedly hates Donald Trump, wants to see Donald Trump in jail, is pimping his merch while he's testifying, by the way. I mean, grifter's gonna grift, I guess. But when you've got Stormy Daniels, who also hates Donald Trump, who also says she can talk to dead people, who told Bill Maher that, again, that the whole thing was a joke, and now she's changing her story again. I mean, you've got to admit that this is not necessarily going well for the prosecution that concocted this. First of all, this whole case out of thin air, never been done, unprecedented charges here. you've got to admit that this is not necessarily going well.
This is the company he keeps. I mean, that's the more concerning thing is that, Michael Cohen was with him for a really long time. And I agree with you, it was pretty clear that he took out a loan on his house to, pay for this, but I don't think he would do it just out of the kindness of his heart. It's convoluted. I don't understand why, we are in a situation where we have a president of the United States who had to pay to keep people silent. I don't like it. I don't like that Bill Clinton silenced women, during his administration and during his campaign. And I don't like it that Donald Trump was silencing people. So yes, I guess these are the people we have to listen to because this is the company that he kept. And I agree, grifter is going to grift. And you've got people like Donald Trump also selling tennis shoes and weird stuff. Like he's got a history of that and wine. And so, I would like if we could sell some ideas and be talking about like ideas and policy in politics. But sadly, that's not the case. And it reminds me when I watch this, corruption charge and everything, it reminds me that, Donald Trump set free Governor Blagojevich from Illinois, who was corrupt and sold President Obama's Senate seat. And so, I think that's the concerning part that I see in Donald Trump is like, if you're telling me that you're some transparent, you're going to like hold power accountable, you're going to be there for us. Like, I don't see that with what you've done. You let out a crook of Illinois and then you've got a bunch of crooks around you and you've paid to cover up some stuff.
I will give you one concession, and that is that Donald Trump historically has not maybe had the best people around him. He has not been the best judge of character in certain instances. I think he put a lot of people around him during his administration that I didn't like to see that ended up stabbing him in the back. I mean, numerous folks that shouldn't have been in the positions that they were in, heeding bad advice from people that shouldn't have been around him. I will agree with you on that point in a limited fashion. But listen, when we're talking about releasing crooks and criminals or benefiting crooks, criminals, thugs, and felons, I mean, to point that out and to try to put that on Donald Trump, when the Democrat Party and every activist, Democrat, liberal DA around this country is actively releasing thugs, felons, crooks, and criminals on a daily basis, including, as we're talking about New York, the cop beaters who were illegal immigrants getting a plea deal. I mean, that's a little rich, don't you think?
Look, I think that we should be holding people accountable, and we're not in too many cases. I mean, in California, I just had someone who's talking about, an employer just not paying someone for a really long time. The employer is in trouble for all sorts of issues, including child molestation, and we need to hold these people accountable. The question is, who do you trust to hold them accountable? And I think that we need a new generation of leaders who are going to do the right thing. And that's the problem is too many people, and it's probably because of campaign finance reform and all sorts of reasons. We've got people who are spending their own money, they're getting in power, and then they've got more power to basically allow unfortunate things to happen. And so we've got this, it's cyclical, it's ugly, and too many Democrats and Republicans are not holding the crooks and the criminals accountable. And that is what I believe ordinary people like myself from Galesburg, Illinois want, and ordinary people like yourself want our government to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that we should keep criminals behind bars. And I'm talking about the ones that are jacking people's cars, that are punching people randomly in the face in New York City. Yeah, we just had a teen again who went on a shooting spree. And unfortunately, the whole criminal justice reform narrative hoax, as I would call it, would be that you can reform people that want to hurt and terrorize other people. I'm not waiting for them to be reformed. I'd rather they just be in a jail cell. But that's just me. I want to talk about some new breaking news as well, that Joe Biden, almost 4 years in, has finally decided that he may take executive action on the border. And I use that term lightly. He could do it right now. Reports are coming in from the New York Post that once there 4,000 people illegally invade our country, Joe is mulling over the idea of shutting the border. I know that this has kind of put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, a giant gaping bullet hole, but I'm guessing you're going to tell me that this is going to be the solution to the immigration crisis.
No, it's not going to be the solution to the immigration crisis. The immigration crisis in our country is that we have not dealt with this in 25 plus years. We could have better processes to get people in this country, to vet them, to get people who are qualified to work in this country, and that would take bipartisan congressional action. I think the problem is that so many things haven't happened in Congress that you see president after president have to deal with executive actions. You know, I remember moving to California from DC, having worked with President Obama, and people told me that Obama was called the porter in chief because Janet Napolitano, who was fantastic and our Homeland Security chief, had been a border governor and was absolutely on top of making sure that she used every executive power that she had to enforce what laws Congress has had on the books. Now, the laws that Congress has had on the books aren't actually helping us get people processed and into this country who absolutely deserve a right to work in this country. I mean, we have brilliant people from all around the world who want the freedoms of America. And when they come here and they work, we all benefit from that. They start companies here.
Do you think we're bringing in brilliant people from around the world? Because I would argue with that assessment. Listen, I understand that there's people that want to get into the United States of America and they want to live here and they want to work here. And a lot of those people are decent people who want to raise their families. And I understand that and I feel for them. And if I was in their shoes, I would want to come to America too. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other people who want to come here and they want to suck off the system and they want to get health care and they want to have babies here and they want to bring the rest of their families over here. And unfortunately, the hard reality, I would argue, is that we are also importing poverty. We've got poverty in the U.S. and we're importing poverty from around the world. And I don't think that's sustainable. I think that it's great to have an immigration policy where you bring in great people, where you fill jobs. But I feel like at this point, as we sit here, especially after Biden's let in, 15 million, I feel like we're full. I feel like we could take a break for a while.
I don't think we're full. And I would say, you know, when we're looking at China, 1.4 billion people, India, which is going to surpass them, you know, 1.4 billion people. And we're sitting over here, you know, 350 million people. Look, I think that America is great because families like mine, like yours, you know, my family came here and maybe we were those people who were considered, you know, trying to live off of the system that America designed to give them more freedom and more rights because they left Europe in systems that were classist, in systems that were, you know, not allowing them to work and get and live that American dream. And they came here to the Midwest and worked really hard as farmers, and then worked really hard in construction, and then worked really hard in entrepreneurship. And that's the American dream. I want to preserve that. I would say that, yes, Tommy, we do get some of the world's best and brightest. The problem is we don't actually let them stay here. We have them come to our colleges and our universities, and then we send them to their homes.
I would also argue that a lot of them that are coming to our colleges and universities are chanting Antifada from the river to the sea. So I'm perfectly fine with sending their ungrateful asses right on back where they came from.
There are a lot of Americans who are chanting that too, and they are completely duped by, you know, this TikTok information. Like, I don't understand it when we're talking about, you know, the pro-Palestinian protests. I've visited Israel and the Palestinian territories with President Obama. I have met with the Palestinian Authority. I've never met with Hamas. They're a terrorist organization. Thank God I never met with Hamas. They do not give a crap about my right to free speech or any of these college campus protesters. Israel is a vibrant democracy. There was already a lot of debate around some of the judicial reforms. Bibi Netanyahu is a kind of, you know, a self-interested leader who actually President Obama had plenty of problems with. President Trump had plenty of problems with. In fact, I believe he's used some swear words about Bibi Netanyahu. Look, Bibi Netanyahu isn't perfect, but you've got a democracy. Yeah. I don't know that we're going to solve through TikTok or campus protests a problem that has been alive and well since, you know, the dawn of the religions of Abraham. So pretty sure we're not going to solve it. But I do think that what you're seeing here is, you know, Biden, despite all of the protests from the far left of the party, he is continuing. Unfortunately, there was the pause in arms, but he has continued. They just continued to give Israel the arms that they need to fight the terrorist organization and continue to support a vibrant democracy. In our own party, we have to do a better job of really holding people accountable and saying, there is no solution. As much as I would love it for the Palestinian children to have a free government in which they can have the same rights that I enjoy, that you enjoy, those things, I wish it would exist, that we could raise
it's not Israel stripping that from them. It's not Israel stripping that from them. It's them voting in terrorist organizations to lead them. And you've got... Yeah, well, you've also got...
Vote is generous.
Yeah, well, again, but you've got 80% of the Palestinian people saying that they agree with the attacks on October 7th. So you've got a real problem there. You've got an information war. I understand it. It's indoctrination. Those people grow up that way. They are indoctrinated that way. I understand that. But it's also poses a real problem when we want to criticize Israel. They're not helping their own people over there. So I don't know why people think...
You have some Israelis who believe the Palestinians don't have a right to exist. You have Palestinians who don't believe that the Israelis have a right to exist.
I'm not really seeing them in the street, though, Joanne. I'm not really seeing them in the street saying that the Palestinians don't have a right to exist, but I sure am seeing a lot of people standing in the street saying that Israel doesn't have a right to exist.
Oh, I had a really great conversation with Dennis Ross, who's been at this for like 30, 40 years. He's been trying to negotiate. He's the closest we got to a peace deal. And he was essentially saying, Bibi actually in his own government has some people who very much do not want the Palestinians to exist. And he's having to play kind of down the middle, knowing that exists within his own government. So that exists. It's not out in our campuses. And thank God. I wish we wouldn't have people on our campuses who don't believe that the Israelis have the right to exist, because they absolutely do. And right now, they have a more rights-driven democracy than the Palestinian Authority, which is corrupt and inept, has at all.
Yeah, we have a lot of nincompoops on college campuses that I don't think that they really want to solve anybody's conflict. I think that they're just bored and weird and they have nothing else to do with their time. And so that is their idea of socializing with others is to chant from the river to the sea. It's a mind virus. I would argue a woke mind virus, but
they're also harmed, Tommy. Like, I started thinking about that. These kids have been shut down during their college career. These kids are still wearing masks. They are terrified. They've been living in the system in which...
Who did that?
I think it's the media and the resistance on both sides. And so
why are they still wearing masks? Why do you think they're still wearing masks? Because I obviously have a lot of Republican cohorts and they're not wearing masks anymore, but liberals are still wearing masks and liberals are still afraid of COVID, they say. I mean, who did that to them, though, to alter their brain chemistry?
A lot of things have become people's identity. It's the same reason of why people are wearing MAGA, flags when Trump led them to believe that he won election that he didn't.
I would argue that wearing, something that you love America and you love Donald Trump and you want to make America great again, I would argue that that's much different than walking around in a duck mask thinking that you're going to get COVID when you're 20 years old.
The kids who are wearing these, I believe that they think it's a sign of respect for people. It's a sign of respect.
As they're sitting there chanting from the river to the sea, Antifada, they're wearing a mask to respect others.
They think that they are human rights warriors, that they are defending the Palestinian people. It's perverted, but people believe this because they are in their own media bubbles and they're not having conversations with people who disagree with them. And so you have some of these kids, and I want to give a lot of people in this country therapy. I honestly think, we need some therapy for people to say, right now, we've all just kind of lost the, narrative. We've lost, what America actually could be and what we can be together. And so we've got to find some way to get people the therapy that they need from the pain that they've experienced from this resistance on social media.
I don't feel like they've actually... I would argue they actually haven't experienced pain. I would argue that they wish that they were oppressed because they have glamorized oppression. It's weird to
My
me.
my dad used to always say this, you know, Johanna, everybody's got problems. And he is not wrong. You know, their problems may be first world problems,
Yeah, you're
problems
telling
of
me.
significant privilege. But they don't know that, right? Like, and similarly, you know, people who in Galesburg believed that Donald Trump was going to be the savior, and he hasn't been the savior because nobody alone is going to be the savior. We're going to have to
Yeah.
actually come together and do the hard work. You know, they're frustrated with that too. And so, you know, we're in this situation where you've got people who just feel like they've gotten the short end of the stick. And I'd say by being born in America, the wealthiest country, the strongest country with the rights that we have gotten far from the short end of the stick. We have gotten the fantastic end of the stick.
Some of
and it
these
is
people
what we
were
are
not
going to do
some
with
of these
it.
people were not hit with a stick or spanked as a child, and it shows. Maybe that tough love would be what they need more than the constant coddling and placation that we give these brats.
Well, we don't value the role in our society of taking care of our children. Too often it's outsourced to our schools.
Yeah.
And we don't have, like, we are not valuing, you know, I've always said my mom was a stay-at-home mom. That was a job. She was working every single day. And we don't value people's work the same way in the society. And in this society that has become so out of whack with income, you know, divides at such extreme levels, we've got, you know, people who can barely afford to live with the two incomes, and we aren't taking care of our kids. So in many cases, they actually haven't had many people around them that are in the position of giving them love, period. Tough love, whatever it is.
Or boundaries, structure. I'm glad that you brought up things being super expensive, though. I don't want to call him your president, but I'm going to go ahead and call him your president, Joe Biden. He's my president too, I guess. But
He's our president.
yeah,
So
he's
was
our.
President
I know
Trump.
it's embarrassing to
President
say.
Trump was our president.
Yeah, he's our president, mostly your president, though. Joe Biden is still spinning this lie that when he took office, inflation was at 9%. He said it last week. He said it again this week. I have to play the clip just in case you don't believe me, and then I want to get your spin on it. Let's take a listen.
Inflation has gone slightly up. It was at 9% when I came in, and it's now down around 3%. But the fact is that I think people are just uncertain. And that's why we got to be steady, stay the course, and continue to produce these incredible jobs. And by the way, the pay for the jobs are outpacing the inflation rate they're paying. We're going to be able to deal with this.
Johanna, that's a lie.
So I hate government waste. I hate when things are, you know, wasted. And in the aftermath of the pandemic, we had more money go out in COVID, PPP fraud and abuse than we've paid on the entire war in Ukraine. We paid people to stay home.
Yeah.
We had people pouring milk down drains instead of selling it. All of these things led to inflation.
Yeah.
We are seeing that inflation, and it's global inflation. So it's not just us. And if you actually look at it, the US has done better in the inflation models. It's not great. It's terrible. It's actually terrible. People
Yeah.
are hurting. They can barely afford to live, but we are doing better than some other countries. I would also say the dollar is exceedingly strong right now, which a lot of people don't actually pay attention to because you're not in a position where you're traveling to other countries and realizing that that dollar is strong because you're barely affording, you know, your groceries at Walmart. So, you know, but the dollar is strong because we are actually handling it better. I would blame a lot of the position we're in we gave massive tax cuts to the wealthiest top percentage earners. We then had PPP fraud and abuse that was on both the Democrats and Republicans' hands that went out the door. And now we're in a position where we're trying to catch up with that. And yet Biden has spent significantly on what he's trying to do, which is bring energy security. Democrats talk about this in the wrong way.
Energy security means
Democrats and
forcing
Republicans-
electric vehicles on people that they don't want.
Democrats and Republicans actually agree that right now our electric grids are vulnerable. Our grids are vulnerable. We've seen it from
Yeah.
Texas to California. We've got wildfires. We have to address this issue. So what he's looking at is trying to get us into a position, and I think you've got a lot of people, companies are doing this too, who are trying to get us into a position in which we are not so dependent on the Saudis, and we're
That'd
not
be
so
nice.
dependent.
Yeah, too bad that Biden shut a lot of that down, right, on day one. But I
Well,
want to
okay.
ask you.
So the Keystone Pipeline was going to be a significant, it was every single state was taking this to court. It was not like it was just going to go through.
No, the permitting process had been going on for like 8 years, and they were at the finish line.
Forever.
Yeah, but
But
they were at the finish line, and they were building things, and
The
unfortunately,
finish line is generous, Tommy.
the finish line. I mean, I was there. The finish line. There were businesses being built up in that town. Like, hey, we're ready for this. The pipeline workers are coming in.
They were ready.
Yeah,
They were ready.
12,000
They were
people are going to
going to
have
compete
jobs.
with
It's just,
lawsuits.
it's hard for me to believe that Democrats want energy security when they shut down oil leases and when they push electric vehicles on people that, by the way, crap out. They can't even go, considerable distance. They freeze in the winter.
I'll say the PHEV, the one where you can have gas and electric, is pretty great. It's too expensive right now.
Yeah, it's too
But
expensive.
it is
So
actually-
good thing for the wealthy people that can afford to have a hybrid. But I want to
It's
ask
too
you.
expensive right now, but Tommy, you know that this is with any new technology.
Yeah, with any new technology,
Oh,
let's
it's
just
like-
subsidize it.
oh,
Like,
it's
I mean,
not.
like your boss with Solyndra. But I want to talk about the original point here, and I want to ask you if this bothers you. And you have to be honest with me. Does it bother you that Joe Biden keeps lying about inflation and that he keeps lying about a number of things and he's just flat out making things up? Does that bother you at all? Because it would bother me if I was trying to defend this guy who just keeps lying. And I'm not
Are
talking
you
about.
bothered by Trump's lies?
Listen, when Trump lies, it's like you people say, oh, well, the crowds weren't as big as the crowds actually were. I mean, I'm talking about him going on interviews with a straight face twice in the last week saying that he came into office with 9% inflation. That's a lie. He keeps repeating the lie.
So
Why?
So look, I think that our politics.
You know, he's lying. Either he doesn't remember or he's lying.
So when he came into office, at that point in time, we were dealing with the COVID pandemic. We were still in lockdown. I mean, we literally had lived through conventions that were remote or on the White
Which
House
thank
lawn.
God for Joe that they
It
were.
was super weird. Like we had just come out of fighting over toilet paper. Thank God I never did, but like a lot of people were fighting over toilet paper in Home Depots. I mean, it was ugly, ugly stuff. So yeah, when he came into office, the world was at a different place. I will cede this. I think that we have not done enough to try to address the real pain people are feeling. Now, Biden's talking about reinventing a tax structure which would actually tax the wealthiest 1% pretty substantially. You and I may agree on some things on taxes. Like right now, a flat tax would be more fair than the tax that we have, which is allowing Donald Trump to write off his makeup and his hair and whatever else he wants to write off. I don't write those things off, but he can because he's got the accountants who can do it. And so, if we could look at some of those things that would actually make it so that the, hardworking people of America are not the only people paying taxes, and that we've got, the Trumps of the world or the Elon Musks of the world getting around every tax that they can, I think it would be better.
Okay.
I'd like to see us all believe that, and I do believe this. If I am lucky enough to make money in America, I am really happy to pay for that dream to be alive and well for the next generation.
Okay.
We are very much not in that situation right now. Everyone, Democrats and Republicans, are trying to run away from taxes.
Well, so is
But
Hunter Biden, his son, trying
inequality.
to run away from taxes, but that's
Oh, I
another.
mean, for real.
But I know that
Yeah,
you're
for
not going to
real, you should
answer
pay
me.
'em.
You're not going to answer me about Biden lying about inflation.
Do I hate
but-
that our presidents lie? Yes.
No, not
I-
our president's lie. I'm asking you, does it bother you that Joe keeps lying about inflation? This is not like something that's like, maybe you're kind of
what
exaggerating.
alternative facts
Okay,
he's
see,
speaking
alternative facts, again, you're referring to, that was, the whole alternative facts thing was about the crowd at the Trump inauguration, a little different than lying about inflation,
Well,
which is a
do you
hard
remember-
number,
Do you
hard and
remember
fast.
when Mnuchin was on Brett Baer early in their profligate spending because they were doing the tax cuts for the wealthiest 1%.
No, 80% of Americans got a tax cut under Trump.
He was, well, yeah, but much smaller if you're,
Oh,
you know,
well, it was
a lot of money.
a little better
But-
then.
But okay, so Mnuchin was on, and at that point, Brett Baer was saying, "Don't you think we're going to have massive inflation? You said when we got to this, level, we're going to see massive inflation." And he was like, "No, no, no, no." And I remember, at the time, you had Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross out there saying, "COVID's going to be great for the American economy. We're going to bring all the jobs back from China." Da 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 da. Like, there were some real questionable things.
Definitely not the same thing as lying about a number twice in a week. But I have to wrap it up, as much as I would love to continue, but I have to play one more clip that I'm going to ask you to defend, and I can't wait until you do it. I couldn't let you go without playing this one because I can't wait to hear your spin on it. Let's listen to New York City Mayor Eric Adams talking about the solution to the migrant crisis. Let's play it.
How do we have a large body of people that are in our city and country that are excellent swimmers, and at the same time we need lifeguards? And the only obstacle is that we won't give them the right to work to become a lifeguard.
All right, that was about 2 words away from a racial slur. I can't wait for you to defend it.
I do not have a defense for this, and I would not defend Eric Adams. Eric Adams has had some questionable situations with his own campaign finance reform or campaign finance issues and donors, and I have all sorts of questions about that guy. I am not a New Yorker, so yeah, I am not going to defend it. I will say that this has been a honorable, problem for many politicians stepping in it with stupid things that they've said, but that has been a very stupid thing to say. And I've got to say, I think there are a lot of people who could be lifeguards, and maybe some of our kids could be lifeguards. Eric Adams, that was racist and terrible, and you shouldn't have said it. And hopefully we can get to the bottom of how you've had some questionable situations with your own campaign issues over the past with your finances. So no, I'm not going to defend this, Tommy.
Okay, well, I think we're going to end it on that positive note. I have to have you back because there's so many other topics. I'm sure between now and then, Joe will make up another lie about inflation, or maybe that he attended, what is it? He's attended all the mass, but then he went to a black church. But then, he considers himself, I don't know, Portuguese sometimes. It's really amazing what goes on in the mind of Joe
Donald Trump
Biden.
considers himself a Christian, and that's probably questionable. Didn't he have the Bible upside down at some point? I don't know.
Oh, you got it. That's definitely apples to apples. Definitely.
It's sad stuff. It's sad stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just excited. And I last thing I do want to ask you, though, and it has to be a quick answer. Would you be okay with both candidates getting a drug test before the forthcoming debate?
Yes.
Okay, so if Joe's taken anything to keep him, upright, you'd be okay with exposing that?
They all do, by the way, in the White House. There's Trump did too. They all have access to the White House doctor, and the White House doctor has access to, they give them Ambien to sleep, and they give them, if they're having to deal with multiple time zones. Mick Mulvaney and I have talked about this before.
I'm not so sure it's Ambien that they need to give Joe.
It's not going to be an illegal drug. He's not taking illegal drugs.
No, just something to keep him, awake.
I think that Coke was planted, but that's for another time, Tommy. I love joining you. You were so right about Kristi Noem. So many problems with that one.
Well, at least we've had some areas of agreement. I always appreciate, I know that you do press for a living because you are very, very good with the narrative. And I like it. I applaud it. I appreciate it. It keeps me on my toes. So I'd love to join your podcast again anytime. And thank you so much for taking the time with me.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye. All right, folks. California overlord Gavin Newsom was asked why his state is such a disaster, and his answer, climate change. Oh, I have some final thoughts. So, folks, I don't have to tell you this, but California is a god-awful mess. Some of the highest taxes in the nation, with more gas taxes en route. And yes, the state has a budget deficit of nearly $45 billion. You know, that's some pretty good handiwork on Gavin's part, given the state once had a budget surplus of $100 billion, and the California economy is indeed the 5th largest in the entire world. So you actually have to try being that bad of a leader. Though maybe he was born with it, who knows? But I can tell you what Gavin Newsom for damn sure was born with, and that's covert narcissism. Gavin cannot be wrong and can never admit to being wrong. When confronted with his blatant wrongness or obvious failures, he either lashes out or he lies his way out of it. That's what narcissists do because it can never be their fault. But when asked about his state's embarrassing multi-billion-dollar deficit, Gavin Newsom relied on a familiar scapegoat: weather. Watch.
Can we explain to Californians how we moved from a $100 billion surplus to such a significant deficit in just a matter of a few years?
Well, it's, we can explain it. $349 billion of unprecedented capital gains, 11.6%, when traditional capital gains is around 5.18% on average. It's almost double. So you had massive volatility. What we didn't anticipate is these rain bombs in December, January, February, and March, these atmospheric rivers that led to a federal declaration that led to FEMA and the IRS moving in a direction where we couldn't collect our taxes. If there was any indication that climate change has impacts well beyond those that are often promoted, I would consider our financial delays as just another example of why we need to tackle them.
Those must have been some heavy rains. $45 billion budget deficit rain bombs. Or could it be that his state is hemorrhaging residents and businesses, or perhaps bankrupting the budget to provide for illegal aliens? Or maybe it's that bullet train to nowhere. Well, let's not forget about that state audit from last month, which detailed how the state can't really account for the $20 billion it spent on the homeless crisis. But this isn't the first time Gavin has blamed weather for his inadequacy. I am old enough to remember just 2 summers ago when Gavi sat in an air-conditioned room with his sweater while he instructed his constituents to ration their AC usage to avoid rolling blackouts. The guy is such a snake. He has, along with his fellow Democrats, of course, ruined that once great state, likely beyond repair. And meanwhile, Californians just keep hemorrhaging tax dollars to fund all of it, and they keep voting for the Democrats who keep screwing them over. But I still maintain that Gavin Newsom will be the Democrat nominee, folks. The Californication of America will be our death sentence, and don't say I didn't warn you. But those are my final thoughts. Please like and subscribe to my brand new YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. And I'm excited about this one. Programming alert tomorrow, live at 1 p.m. Eastern. You never know what's going to happen. But I will be joined by RFK Jr.'s running mate, Nicole Shanahan, right here, live in Nashville. But until then, from Nashville, God bless and take care.